What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video with me, the Mighty McGow. You're watching the Mighty Gaming channel. First of all, I'm recording this video just so I don't have to tell this story over and over and over again, because I'm going to have to repeat it a lot. But I figure if I make a video, then that'll make it nice and easy. So I know I've been missing for about a week, so this is what's going on there. It was decided that that I needed to move from Queensland back home to Melbourne. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do, but it was something that I had to do, so I was pretty upset about it at the time. But once it was decided, I basically packed everything that I owned, my clothes, my studio, everything into the back of my pickup and headed south. Now, the day before, basically I just packed everything. I was pretty upset at the time, so I didn't really eat anything, which will contribute to the story later. I also need to mention that you guys know that I get sick pretty often. I have this weird medical condition called gout, where basically my uric acid levels in my blood are too high, and I can't get them to go down. I mean, I'm on 9 times the regular dose of what normally fixes people, and it still isn't, helping me. So, what gout does actually is if you have that uric acid in your blood and it's too much, it actually crystallizes into a shape of, I'm told it's called a razor sharp needle, and those needles get stuck in your joints, and that's basically what makes me sick. Is, I tell people, if you want to know what it feels like, basically cut off your kneecap, get some broken glass, shove it in there, and then try to walk to the letterbox and back. And you'll have some idea of what I go through when it decides that it's time to, to give me the pain. But anyway, I did just go through quite a bad spat of that pain before this trip started. But at the time I was feeling fine. I was taking my meds. I wasn't in any pain. I didn't feel sick or anything like that. I just packed up all my stuff. Tried to get a good night's sleep. I got about 4 hours. I was pretty upset, so understandable that I didn't get a good night's sleep. And I basically set off in the morning. I actually made myself breakfast that morning, but I was too upset to eat it, so I just left it and got in my car and went. I don't remember taking my meds on that particular morning, but definitely the mornings after and the mornings before, absolutely I took everything. Now, on the first day, I'm going to try and find a map for you guys, actually, just to make this a little bit more easy. Not that I can spell Australia. Map. Let's see if I can make this a bit easier to talk about. So as you guys know, I live in sunny Cairns, which is right there. Beautiful sunny Cairns. The Great Barrier Reef is like out here. I wonder if it comes up on the map. It does. There's the Great Barrier Reef. So it's just outside Cairns. So on the first day I left Cairns and I went down past Townsville and I stopped just past a place called Emerald, which is there. So I drove about 1,000 kilometers on the first day, which took about 12 hours. It was bucketing down rain. I was really lucky that I had the seal on the back of my ute closed, and it kept the computers and all that sort of stuff alive. Not really a lot happened on the first day. As I said, I left Cairns very early that morning, and I arrived in a place called Emerald, which is here. Actually, just past Emerald, which is probably Blackwater. I don't think I made it to Roma. Definitely somewhere Emerald. I stopped either in Emerald or Blackwater, one of those two. So, I mean, I've made it. Not really. I mean, my target was here, and I'd left from here. And I'd made it to there. So I hadn't really made it all that far yet. Basically, when I stopped in Emerald that night, I went and got some dinner. And while I was getting dinner, I went to the bathroom. And it's not really something you talk about when there's something weird going on in your guts. Something strange was going on. I thought I was just sick, or my body was purging something, or I don't know. I basically hadn't eaten anything, which was kind of weird because there was some very strange things coming out of me. But as I said, it's not really something you just, you ring up your mate and go, hey, guess what came out of my ass? So I didn't really think a lot about it, but there was something weird going on. But anyway, later that night I went back to my hotel, which was in Blackwater, I believe, possibly. It was just past Emerald. It might even be in a tiny little town. You know, it was Springshaw, there you go. I even remember the name. So I was in Springshaw, just past Emerald. I remember the name. So I was in Springshaw in my hotel room later that night, and I had more weird things come out of my rear end that I couldn't really explain and didn't know what was going on. As I said, I just thought I was sick, or I felt fine. I wasn't in any pain. I didn't have a stomach ache. I wasn't hungry, but I felt fine. So anyway, the second day of the trip, I set off from Springshaw at about 5 in the morning. Almost. Well, I mean, I was following, and I knew that it was a high danger at that time to hit a kangaroo. So I was following other vehicles to use them as shields against kangaroos, because I didn't have any sort of... My car doesn't have any armor on it against kangaroos, whereas almost every car you see out that way has armor on it, like steel bars and that sort of stuff. So if they hit a kangaroo, the kangaroos just bounce off and they don't really damage your car. But I don't even remember which way I was going. I know I was going south. And basically I was following another guy. He turned off somewhere, I don't know, past Rolleston. I was going down this way. And about 5 minutes after he turned off, a kangaroo jumped out in front of me. Now, it was actually 2 kangaroos. There was one far off the road, which I saw first. And, I mean, he wasn't a danger. He was far off the road. Now, kangaroos are dumb as dog shit. They don't know what's going on, what cars are, and what they need to be worried about. The kangaroo jumped straight out in front of me. It wasn't a huge kangaroo. It was maybe waist height, like maybe a meter high. I definitely didn't want to hit it, so I pulled the wheel quite quickly. I mean, I've got laser sharp reflexes. So I managed to miss the kangaroo and regain control of the vehicle. I mean, I didn't slide or skid or anything. I can't even actually remember if the tyres skidded or not. I just remember it was a very quick, you know, jerk at 100 kilometers an hour to, you know, change lanes and then change lanes back again very quickly. I reckon I missed that kangaroo by about this much. But anyway, that was the morning of that second day. I also killed a bird with my mirror that day. I was doing 100 clicks and the bird didn't get out of the way quick enough. And, yep, just heard the bang on the side mirror of the driver's door and the bird died. And, you know, what do? You can't, they don't get out of the way. You do it 100 kilometers an hour. You don't swerve for a bird. I swerve for kangaroos, not birds. Unfortunate for the bird, but shit happens. But anyway, I refueled a few times that day and I kept heading south towards Melbourne. And basically I got to about this point near St. George, where somehow I missed St. George. I mean, this road it goes through St. George, so I must have gone down this way. I don't know. I can't figure out how I didn't see St. George. I mean, I got to about St. George and I started panicking that I was going to run out of petrol because I was quite low. And I was on this road when I stopped somebody and I didn't get out of the car. I just waved him down as I was going by and I asked him where's the next town. And he said if I keep going where I'm going, in about 70 kilometers I'll reach a place called Bandy. So I kept going and I made it to Bandy, no problem. I had about 50 kilometers of range left in my ute out of the 750 to 800 it gets with the big V8. So I stopped in Bandy, in this town right here. I don't know if it's going to bring up any pictures. Not really. It's a teeny tiny town. I mean, it has a total population of 400 people. Don't ask me how, but it has a hospital, it has one pub, and it has, I believe, 1 or 2 motels. But anyway, I pulled into the only petrol station in town, and the moment I got out of my ute, I immediately knew that I was very, very unwell. I thought I was going to vomit, or I was going to be sick, or I was going to poop myself, or something like that. So I thought, well, if I can at least fill up my car and then go to the bathroom, then I'll be alright. So I started filling up my car. I got to about half a tank, and then I knew something was going to happen immediately, so I just left the car. I mean, I left the fuel nozzle in the car and everything. And I ran into the petrol station and asked them for a bathroom. The lady behind the counter said they had a bathroom and it was around the back, so I ran around the back and I thought I was going to vomit, but instead I did another weird poop. I didn't know it at the time, but I mean, I hate talking about poo because it's so weird, but it's poo. We all do it. It's poo. Everybody poos. The poo looked like motor oil. It was black as black can be, and it had the consistency of oil. And I hadn't really been eating anything. Probably now for 2.5 days I hadn't really eaten anything, and I'd been just having these weird poops. So, I mean, I wasn't having them when I left. On the first night I had 2, and on the second morning I had 2 after I nearly hit the kangaroo. And when I got to Darren Bandy I had a 5th one. So, I'm in the bathroom in this petrol station. My car's half filled up with the fuel thing still in the petrol tank and everything, like the fuel nozzle. I get out of the bathroom. I figure that I must feel alright now. I get back to my ute and I realize I'm still not right. Something's wrong. Everything starts spinning. My vision starts going black. I managed to stumble my way into the petrol station. And now it wasn't just a petrol station. It was a petrol station and a fish and chip shop. So it had chairs and stuff and tables and stuff everywhere. So I sat down on the closest chair to the door and begged them for some cold water because I just thought I was just hot. That's what I thought was wrong, that I was hot. I mean, it was, again, actually the first day wasn't too hot. The second day was very hot. I believe it was in the 40s or high 30s. I had tons of water with me, but no air conditioning. So I had my windows down. I was pretty sunburned on one side from driving with the windows down, as you happen. You know, if you get driver's arm, if you hang your arm out the window and you get sunburnt, I'd had plenty of driver's arm. But I just thought it was hot. So they gave me some cold water, and the cold water did actually make me feel better. Till I got up. Every time I tried to get up, I mean, I eventually, after sitting there for about half an hour, I did manage to get up, go finish fueling my car, and move it out of the way, and then I came back to sit down because I was feeling really bad again. And once again, as soon as I stood up, the world started spinning, everything started going blurry and black, and I was like, oh, that's not good. Now, some gentleman that was in the petrol station looked at me and went, whoa, mate, you don't look too good at all. That particular gentleman actually walked past a ambulance that just happened to be driving past up the road once he left the petrol station, and he actually stopped the ambulance and said, there's a bloke over at the servo there, he doesn't look too good, you might want to go and take a look. Now, at that exact moment in time, the lady in the petrol station / fish and chip shop was actually calling an ambulance. So from the time they called to the time the ambulance came was about 1 minute. It was very quick. I mean, it was like she was waiting for me out the front. So now I'm sitting in a petrol station in literally the middle of nowhere. I mean, I'm 1,600 kilometers from my destination and the point where I've left. I mean, I'm exactly halfway through my road trip. And now there's an ambulance coming to look at me. So the lady from the ambulance comes in. She hooks up a machine to my chest and all that sort of stuff. And she starts looking at my blood pressure and all that sort of stuff. She goes, doesn't look too bad. And then she said, okay, now stand up for me. So when I stood up, my blood pressure halved and my heart rate doubled. And she went, oh, fuck, better sit down. And when she figured out that that's what was happening, she said, right, you're not dehydrated. There's something else going on. You're coming for a ride with me. Lock your ute because it's staying here. Now, at this point, one of the lovely people, I mean, I can't say enough about how lovely the people were in Darren Bandy in that town. They couldn't do enough to help me. One of the lovely people in the petrol station offered to drive my ute from the petrol station to the hospital, which was only 5 minutes up the road, but still very kind of them, which they did. So now I'm in the back of an ambulance in the middle of nowhere, in some town I've never heard of, in the desert, basically. So they take me to the hospital, and they start doing tests and blood tests and all that, and they realize that my blood count is really, really, really low. And then I tell them about the weird poop, and they basically tell me that the black oil that's coming out of me isn't oil, it's blood that I've processed. So it's about this point that we realize that the medication that I've been taking to fight the gout problem that I've been having has eaten a hole in the side of my stomach, and I'm bleeding out on the inside, and I have no fucking idea. I mean, I have no pain, I have no stomach ache, I have no rash, no nothing. I mean, I was pale at that point, but you can't tell that you're pale. Only other people see that you're pale, but I haven't seen anybody all day. I've been in the car, so whatever. But anyway, so basically that hospital realizes that, you know, they asked me to provide a sample of the oil that I'm leaking, and I tell them that I maybe not be able to provide them a sample, at which point the doctor says he's going to put on a rubber glove and go get one if I don't give him one. So at which point I absolutely put maximum effort into giving him a sample. Unfortunately for me, though, exerting any sort of, you know, energy from myself almost makes me pass out. So I nearly pass out on the toilet trying to give this doctor a sample. But I do give him a sample. They test it. It's definitely blood. I'm definitely bleeding on the inside. The samples are still coming out, so I'm still bleeding. Now, this hospital in Darren, Bandy, it's the teeniest, tiniest little town with the teeniest, tiniest little hospital. They have no facilities. They have no blood on hand. They have no operating theatres, nothing. So if something happens to me, I mean, if they don't do something, I'm going to die. If I'd not passed out, I mean, I keep realising how lucky I am to have stopped in a town with people around. Because, I mean, if I just got out of my ute on the side of the road somewhere, which I'd driven past a million, you know, rest stops, which had just, there was nothing there. There's a toilet, and a bin, and a chair. That's all that's at the rest stops. So lucky I didn't stop at one of those. And also super lucky that I'd stopped in a town that had a hospital where people were able to figure out what was wrong with me and look after me. But anyway. So at this point, this hospital freaks out because they don't have any facilities to fix me, or, you know, if something goes wrong, they can't really do anything. And they tell me they're going to ship me to another hospital by ambulance. So before I get to the moving away part, I also made a friend in this hospital. It was one of the nurses. Her name was Michelle, and I'm going to refer to her from this point onwards as Michelle of Darren, Bandy. Now, Michelle, a very, very kind lady. I mean, the kindness of the people in these little towns that, you know, everybody knows everybody. She said to me, if they don't look after each other, nobody will. So they look after each other and everybody. I mean, I'd never met this woman from, you know, I'd never met her before in my life, and she'll probably never see me again. But she offered to park my ute and tuck it away, because I told her the story that I was driving from the, you know, the north to the south, and that that all my stuff, including my studio and everything, was in the back of my ute. And at the back, I mean, the computer was in the front, everything else was in the back, and the computer was locked up, but it was just the tower. I mean, my screens, everything else was all in the back. And she said that she would tuck my ute away for me and look after it, which is amazing, considering she'd never met me before. It was just a kindness, a very kind gesture on her behalf, like amazingly kind. So Michelle of Darren, Bandy takes my ute and tucks it away. And they shove me in an ambulance, and they ship me an hour north back to St. George. So now I'm in St. George, which is a bigger hospital, but not huge. St. George is another, I mean, it's a, I don't know how many people live in St. George. Maybe it'll tell me if I click on it. Probably not. Okay, population of 2,395 people. There you go. So slightly bigger, but not much. I mean, Darren, Bandy had 400, St. George got 2,500. However, St. George had blood on hand in the hospital. So I arrive in St. George by ambulance. Now, in saying that, on the trip, I actually made friends also with the guy in the back of the ambulance, who was a very nervous-looking nurse who was a great guy. And I mean, we chatted all the way there. Fantastic bloke. He was a little nervous-looking at the start, but great dude. Basically, he was in the back of the ambulance so that if I started dying, it was his job to keep me alive till I got there. I mean, it was only a 1 hour drive. It wasn't a big deal. But I arrive in St. George. They immediately look at me, realize that I've lost a lot of blood. And one of the first things they do is they inject me with a blood transfusion. So they give me a bag of blood. And then they basically do... Well, they did I can't remember if they did it before or after, but they realized that I was still bleeding. And they needed to see what was going on inside me. Now, they didn't have the facilities to figure out what was going on inside me. But they basically wanted to stick a camera down my throat to have a look and see what was happening. They couldn't do that. So basically what they did was they told me they wanted to ship me to another hospital called Toowoomba, which was 5 hours that way. Which I didn't really want to go to. I mean, I was already pretty upset that I was already an hour away from my ute. Now I was going to be 5 hours away from my ute. I didn't really want to go. The doctor at the time said to me, well, you can stay here and do nothing, or you can go back to your ute and die somewhere between here and Victoria, or you can go to Toowoomba and they'll figure out what's wrong with you and you'll survive. So when they put it like that, it's like, oh, okay. Now... They were pretty nervous about sending me 5 hours by road because of the bleeding. So they decided to send me by air. But they were also nervous that I wasn't going to fit in the plane. So they started measuring me, and they started weighing me, and they started asking me how tall I was. And, you know, they wanted to know how wide my shoulders were and all sorts of stuff. In the end, they did stick me in a plane, in a Australian Flying Doctors aircraft, and they shipped me to Toowoomba. So now, my car's still here. I wish I could leave a marker on the screen there. And now they've flown me to here, to Toowoomba. Now, Toowoomba's a lot bigger. Does it say how many people are living there? I mean, it's a couple of 100,000. It's a much bigger city. And it has a very big hospital. I wonder if I can see the hospital on the map. I see the university and a museum. I don't see a hospital. But anyway, I get to Toowoomba. They do blood tests and all that sort of stuff. And the first thing they do is after they finally found a room for me to stay in. Actually, I've skipped a part of the story. I'm in the plane, flying to Toowoomba, and I mean it's a teeny tiny little plane. It's there's 2 stretchers in there. There's another nurse. This nurse doesn't say anything. She does not say a word. They also send a box with me in the plane, which I didn't realize at the time till after we got there. That was actually a box of blood in case I started flatlining in the plane. They could give me another transfusion. But so we're flying over Toowoomba. We're about to land, and there's myself, there's a nurse, and there's 2 pilots on this plane. There's like an old pro, and there's a rookie. Now the rookie definitely did the landing. And, I mean, it's a tiny little plane. You can hear everything that's going on in the cockpit. And it's got like a height meter thing. So it's counting the height. You know, as we're going down, it's going 500, 200, 100. And, I mean, we're coming in for a landing. I can see the ground out the window. And I'm listening to this counter thing in the front of the cockpit. And it goes exactly like this. This is exactly how it went. 200, 100, 50, 20, 10, 5. And I was like, wow, holy Jesus Christ. Yeah, I thought we were going to bang on the ground. But luckily the pilot did pull back on the stick and we sort of did a like, whoa. And then he did a pretty nice landing after that. So he did well, but he definitely made me, oh, shit. Holy crap. We definitely nearly belly flopped off the runway. But anyway, we landed, they loaded me into another ambulance. The ambulance took me to the Toowoomba Hospital, then they unloaded me. Then they started trying to figure out if I was still bleeding or not. They started doing blood tests like every 12 hours. They were testing my hemoglobin levels, which is basically your red blood cells, which, you know, brings the oxygen around your body. Without any red blood cells, no oxygen goes through your body, you die. Now, the normal human being is meant to have... I believe females, and I mean, I've only know this because I googled it, a normal female is meant to have 140 units, whatever measurement they were using. And a normal a normal female is meant to have 140, and a normal male is meant to have 155 units. When they tested me on the first day, I had, after the blood transfusion, so after they'd given me a bag of blood, I had 87. So that's like half, nearly, of what you're meant to have. And that was after they gave me a blood transfusion. So I must have been pretty low, and they were super nervous. I mean, they weren't letting me go to the bathroom on my own. They weren't letting me go to the shower on my own. They weren't letting me... You know, they were basically keeping me hooked up to a heart monitor at all times in case I flatlined. You know, it was pretty serious stuff. I mean, I just couldn't believe they were making such a big fuss. But, you know, I came that close to dying and I didn't realize it at the time. But anyway, so now I'm in Toowoomba Hospital. I'm 5 hours from my ute and then another 16 hours from my destination. And my blood's like half. So on the second day that I'm in that hospital, I mean, days are going past now. I think I spent 4 days in hospital altogether. On the second day in Toowoomba Hospital, they stuck the camera down my throat. And, I mean, I was quite nervous about it because the paperwork said that they give you a sedative, which means you're sort of half awake, half asleep sort of thing. Basically, they rolled me into a room. There's people everywhere. There was 2 anaesthetists. And they basically, you know, tell you to breathe deeply on this and just, you know, lay back and whatever. And, you know, you don't remember. Just eyes roll into the back of your head and I don't remember anything about it. The next day I came through, or later on that day, I woke up again. And they told me that they had stuck the camera down my throat. And that they had found an ulcer inside my stomach that had been bleeding, but was no longer bleeding. So I was sort of still in trouble, but not really. I mean, I wasn't going to get any worse. They also said that there was a lot of damage in my stomach from taking those tablets to battle my gout for quite a long time. So that was also going to be a problem, but we'll get to that later. So after this point, I basically spent another 2 days in the Toowoomba Hospital, just basically trying to get some strength back. It was funny to watch 3 nurses just stand around and they'd be like, we're going to take your blood pressure now and your heart rate. And then they would take it and they'd be like, okay, oh yeah, you're looking better. And yeah, you seem all right. And then they would go, all right, now we're going to do it, but you're going to have to stand up while you're doing it. And I would stand up and the red flashing lights would start going off on all the machines, and you know the nurses would go, "Oh, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down." And, you know, they would freak out, and they wouldn't let me do anything. They wouldn't let me shower. They wouldn't let me go to the toilet. I mean, I had to piss in a jar, bottle thing, and all sorts of stuff. Good fun. After I think at the 3rd day, they finally let me have a shower. 3 nurses escorted me to the shower, like, you know, going, oh, is he going to fall this way? Is he going to fall that way? They kept telling me if I was going to fall over to just sit down really quickly. And I'd got into the shower, and I mean, I was fine. But I said to them, if I'm going to fall, you'll hear the bang. And of course, you know, 5 minutes into my shower, there's a bang. You know, not from me, from one of the other rooms somewhere else. And of course, 3 nurses burst into the shower, and I'm standing there in the corner, like, holding my wedding tackle, just sort of, hello? No, it wasn't me. I'm alright. I'm good. Can you get out? Like, it was crazy. In the end, they had these, like, really weird hospital robes that I couldn't even figure out how to put them on. It was like buttons up the arm or something was how you put them on. So I had to half put it on and then had to stand there and hold my wedding tackle while the nurses put it on for me. Good times. But anyway, while I'm in the Toowoomba Hospital, I'm having a lot of communications with Michelle of Darren Bandy, who has my ute, who says that on the Friday, and I mean at the moment I've been home for like 2 days, and it's currently Sunday. So she said, on Friday, there's a bus that leaves Toowoomba to go to Darren. It goes through Darren Bandy, which is where my ute is. It leaves at 10:30 in the morning, and it's probably the only bus you'll get. So if you can get out on Friday and get to that bus. So the doctors come around on Friday, and it's about 9 a.m. And the doctors say to me, we're not really happy that you want to go, but, you know, we feel like you're well enough to make it to the rest of your journey, because they know where I'm going. And I said to them, the doctor said, well, we might let you out sometime later this afternoon. And I said, well, the bus that I need to be on to get home leaves at 10:30. So the doctor said, all right, we're going to let you out early. If a physician says you're okay, a physio. So they emergency call a physio. I don't wait for the physio. I immediately dive into a shower. Luckily, they didn't need to burst in and try and check on me this time. I have a really crazy quick cold shower. I mean, it was a fucking terrible shower, but, you know, shit happens. And I come back to my room to find the physio waiting for me. The physio looks at me for about 5 minutes, doesn't even really do anything, just looks at me and goes, yeah, he'll be right. So then they send like a chemist. Now, the chemist informs me that I can never take my medication that I have been taking to combat my gout problem ever again. So they take all that away from me. So they did that already on the first day in the Toowoomba hospital. So at this point, I'm already a little bit sore from the crystallized needles getting into my joints already, but I'm not too bad at this point. But no, it's bearable. I mean, it's sore, but it's bearable. So the physician gives me the all clear. The chemist comes through, gives me a different type of med, everything else I'm going to need. He also explains to me that I've done permanent damage to my insides in my stomach and that I'll need to take... It's not a big deal, it's just that I'll need to take medication to make sure that the walls of my stomach don't collapse for the rest of my life, basically. No big deal, because I already take some medications on a permanent basis anyway, so what's another one? Just throw it on the pile. Too easy. So at this point it's about 10 o'clock. It's half an hour till that bus leaves. I'm dressed. I have everything I need. I've got the forms to get out of the hospital, everything, and I'm standing in the taxi rank out the front of the Toowoomba hospital. But there's no taxis there. So I immediately get on the phone, call myself a cab. The cab comes and gets me. The cab takes me to this bus port thing, which is basically like a big garage with a couple of buses in it, but there's nobody around. There's just a couple of buses in a garage, that's it. So I immediately ask the first person that I can see. They direct me to a little window around the back of this place that has information, that directs me to another window, that directs me to another window, that gives me like a little piece of paper with a phone number on it. So I ring that piece of paper phone number. They tell me to go to platform 1A, which I went to. Sure enough, there's a bus sitting there with Darren Bandy written on the front of it. So I jump in that bus. And I mean, I made it with only 3 minutes to spare. So if I didn't make it on that bus, I'm not quite sure what I was going to have to do to try and get home. So at this point, it's Friday. I've been in hospital for 3 or 4 days already. I've been on the road for a day and a half. And I'm in a bus going back towards Darren Bandy. So luckily for me, the bus heads back the right way. The bus nearly has a car accident at one point. Then we go through an area where there's just cows everywhere on the road, and one of the cows tries to kick the bus, which was kind of funny. But anyway, the bus leaves from here, goes up this way through Dalby, Maroon, Westmar, and then I end up back at St. George, and then back in Darren Bandy. So now I'm back in Darren Bandy. I'm still quite low on blood. I believe with the last time they tested me, I was 89. So I was going up, but very slowly. 89 out of 155 is not a lot. So Michelle of Darren Bandy, the beautiful nurse who took my car for me and looked after it, picked me up once the bus dropped me off. She had organised a mates rates hotel room for me, which is just amazing. She'd also been the one that had helped me figure out how to get home, which was the bus. Once again, I don't know how to say thank you enough to her. I mean, I tried to offer her, to give her a gift, to give her money, to fill up her petrol, to give her something, anything. She didn't want anything in return. She said, just go and have a good long life and, you know, thank you, lucky stars. So I pick up my ute, and Darren Bandy has one pub / hotel. God, you can't even see the streets. That's how small it is. So basically, I go to this hotel where Michelle's organised the room for me, and blow me over, who's standing in the pub there? The guy who was in the back of the ambulance with me, who was looking pretty nervous, who looked after me while they moved me from Bandy to St George Hospital. So I book into my room, I go back to the bar, and I hang out with old mate for a couple of hours. Here's a few drinks, I have a few cokes, and we just hung out, talk shit, and then he goes away. I go back to my hotel and I go to bed. I get a pretty reasonable amount of sleep that night, but I get up at 5 in the morning. I mean, it was super cold, so I wasn't really that keen to get up. And I don't know how, but it had been, in the 40s all week in Bandy, and then on the Friday it suddenly went down to 20s. So it wasn't too hot, which is good, because I was a bit not as strong as I normally am. So I got up, got dressed, packed my ute, got back in the car, and started heading south. Now, I had a very, very, very busy morning that morning I left from Bandy. I mean, it was 6 a.m. when I left. It was barely daylight. And I mean, when you're in kangaroo areas, it's when the sun's just coming up or just going down. That's when you're the most dangerous time of the day, when they're very active and they're all over the road and that sort of stuff. That particular morning, for the first few hours of the day, I definitely had a busy time. There were sheep all over the road. There were cows all over the road. I saw 10 kangaroos. Thankfully, I didn't have any more close calls. I saw one ostrich or emu or whatever it was, running along the side of the car. I saw more dead animals on the side of the road than I could ever care to count. And I mean, mostly kangaroos, and probably only 20 of those were like big kangaroos, like mighty sized kangaroos, like, the 6 foot tall ones, the big reds. You definitely don't want to hit a big red at 100 kilometers an hour, even a dead one. It'll fuck your car up. But anyway, at this point I've driven, I've got back in the car in Bandy. I'm heading south again. I go through Lightning Ridge, all those sort of places. And I do a stupid thing that, I probably shouldn't have done, but I do it anyway. I was still pretty upset, and I just wanted to get home, and I was pissed off that I'd been stuck in these, towns in the middle of nowhere for a while. So I go all the way. I go straight from Bandy. I stopped for little pit stops for 10 or 15 minutes here, but not very long. I did stop for food twice. But I drove for 16,000 kilometers, something like that. So I started there in Bandy, which you can see where it is on the map. It's inside Queensland, and I finished that night. I started there at 6 a.m. and I arrived in Melbourne at 11 o'clock that night. So at the moment I'm living here in Melbourne in a place called Berwick. There it is there, Berwick. So it's substantially colder down here. It can get hot in the summer, but it won't get anywhere near as hot as Queensland. So when I make videos now, I'm probably not going to be wearing a singlet anymore, although you never know. Obviously my family's very happy to see me after the whole ordeal. At this point I need to mention that on that day when I pulled in to Melbourne, or to Berwick, Melbourne's up here, there was actually a terrorist attack in Melbourne that kind of half failed, half didn't. The guy killed one person and then police shot him. So that's interesting. You're driving past the city while there's a fucking terrorist attack going on. That's always, scary. And the other thing that I really want to mention is that there was another family doing a road trip like mine, but they were in Northern Territory, which is up here. Somewhere in the Northern Territory. I haven't looked at the exact details. And unfortunately their vehicle broke down in the desert, and they had no water, nothing. And Australian Air and Rescue located their bodies, I believe a fair way from their vehicle. So that just gives you some idea of how easy it can happen. My heart absolutely goes out to them and their families, who lost 4 people just because the car broke down. And I could have been another person like that. Like, fuck, I was that close. I was just so lucky that I stopped where I did, and, you know, the people that were there looked after me. So lucky. But anyway, at the moment I'm in Melbourne, in Berwick. I'm going to be here for some time. Obviously, I've set up my studio because it's still working here. I'm still quite weak. I don't know if I look pale in the video or not. My heart rate spikes every time I stand up and I feel a bit fuzzy. Because they've taken all the gout medications away from me, I'm definitely slowly, I'm in a lot of pain, but, you know, I'm always in a lot of pain, so it's not a big deal to me. But it does mean that there won't be any videos gaming-wise for a while. But I'm home safe. I'm back home with Mummy and Daddy for a little while, just till I get better and get back on my feet. But that's it. That's the story of how Mighty nearly died on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, and they wouldn't have found me for ages. Absolutely ages. Unbelievable. But anyway, thank you for watching my video. I'm sorry it went on forever. There will be new videos as soon as I'm feeling a bit better, but I'm still going to need a little bit of time to recover. I mean, my hand's all swollen up still and a whole heap of other stuff, but I'll be back on as soon as I can. But as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys when I see you. Oh, and before I go, I also want to say another massive thank you to everybody who sent me a message, family and YouTube related. I mean, I fell off the face of the earth for 1 week, and I got like an unbelievable amount of messages from people asking if I'm okay, what's going on, where am I, what's happening. So thank you to everybody who sent me messages and stuff like that. But that's the story. Hopefully I don't have to tell it again. You just can watch the video now. But I'll see you guys online or in person if you know me in real life. Okay, thanks for watching. See ya.